James Gabriel Gough, or as we know him, Gabe, all right, was a military veteran in the Army. He then, when that concluded, he came here to Johnson County Community College, spent a couple of years here, and then went to UMKC, and I'm not going to steal a lot of your thunder, but UMKC to Georgetown University for graduate school, where he was able to get a job at a variety of places in Washington, D.C. Most of those details I'll let you know, but they were Department of Defense, they were Department of Veterans Affairs, and he is currently working with Deloitte, which is a nice conglomerate term for somebody that does everything. I looked it up this morning. You've heard of Deloitte Touche, the accounting firm, right? Well, I think Deloitte owns them, or a larger version of that, and they do all kinds of consulting work, managerial, for things like the government, for corporations, for foreign countries, international groups, and so he's working for them now. And I hope the way we're going to do this today a little bit is I'm going to introduce him, he's going to talk to you for a little bit, and then I have a series of questions that I'm going to kind of seed the clouds with here, get him to answer those, and then you be thinking of things that you might want to ask him as we get towards the end of the hour. And we'll just learn as much as we can, right? Great. So please welcome, if you will, Gabe Gough.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm not too loud. Am I all right? Okay. Thank you, Johnson County, for letting me come back. Thank you, Jim. I'm a little bit more nervous than I normally would be because I'm looking at my 5th grade teacher, I think. And she's going to be able to see through all of the BS that I'm getting ready to kind of spout out to you. I see some friends from my friends' parents from high school who are here, some friends of mine from high school who are also here, so they're also going to be able to see through a lot of the BS that I'm about to give to you. I want to say hi to Austin Phillips. He's a guy that I joined the Army with. I was in high school with him, and he was a great friend of mine then. He was a great friend of mine in the Army. We went to college here together, he's meant a lot to me for a long time. So thanks for being here. But as I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to speak about here today, there's nothing happening in D.C. that's not interesting at the moment. But I didn't want to talk about the impeachment of the President of the United States. But what I did kind of want to talk about, which I thought would be interesting, is that nobody's contesting a lot of the facts of the case right now. What they're talking about is the shaping of public opinion. They want your brains. So they want to control the narrative on this. They're looking at poll numbers, right? So I thought it would be an interesting discussion to talk about what you think, how you think, and why you know what you know to be true at all, right? So while I was here, I'll give a little bit about me first. I went to Shawnee Mission South for high school, where I learned that there's nothing greater than a Raider, right? Yes. I was in the Army for 4 years. I served with Austin. Another couple of good friends of mine, Luke and Clint Ebert, their mom's here. I served with them. But then I came here. I went to UMKC afterwards, and I went to Georgetown. But it was here that I kind of first learned how to think, to be honest. Because for any of my friends here, family who knows anything about me, they know that I don't have a problem telling you what I think. But the problem that I did have at the time was I didn't know how to tell you why I thought that way. I didn't know how to support my own position, right? So we're all the products of our experiences, our friends, our family, our religion, our lack thereof. You kind of get it. It's a mixture. It kind of makes us who we are, and it shapes our identities. So when I came here in 2005, I was a 22-year-old kid. I was not far removed from fighting in Fallujah in Iraq in 2004. Some of you who have had some of us older veterans in the classroom, believe me, we're very aware of how old we are compared to our younger classmates. But I need to apologize, I think, to some of my professors who are here. Because while I had no problem telling them what I thought, I didn't know how to tell them why. I didn't know how to tell them how. And when I was challenged by a lot of my younger classmates on these positions that I held, I couldn't support these things. I mean, no one wakes up every day excited to be wrong about a great many things. Anyone? There's usually one hand, smart aleck, who likes to raise it. So some of you may be familiar with the late Christopher Hitchens. He wrote a great book that I think young people should read called Letters to a Young Contrarian, where he says in there that the essence of the independent mind lies not in what it thinks, but in how it thinks. Because if you focus on how you think, it forces you to understand the process by which you know anything to be true. Because if you don't focus your energies on these processes, then we're essentially nothing more than a Rolodex of responses. We know how to repeat things we hear. We're all that smart, right? We all kind of go to whatever news source makes us feel safe, and we all want to feel like we have something to lend to these things, so we know how to repeat things. But what you're doing is you're robbing yourselves of some of the best gifts that you have available to you. That's the ability to think for yourselves, the ability to think critically, and to not be the person who listens to those who say, repeat after me, right? So what made me aware of this Rolodex style of thinking that I had happened to me in one of Bill's classes. Bill teaches history here. It takes a lot of reading and class discussion, and I came across something while preparing for one of his classes that completely undermined a position that I thought was true. It wasn't insignificant either. This is something that I had argued about in public. For any of you who are married, it's like when you're arguing with your spouse, and that feeling of dread comes over you that, damn it, they're right. Like my wife has come to me 2 weeks later, and you'll hear her say, aha. You're like, what? These aren't good feelings. Nobody likes being wrong about these things, right? So a lot of it turns into, what are you going to do about it, right? So I'd say that the inscription on Sigmund Freud's memorial reads that the voice of reason is small, but very persistent. Socrates called this voice an inner daemon, not a demon, a daemon. Adam Smith in the theory of moral sentiments, he called it an inner critic, an internal witness. You have C.S. Lewis, and he gave it the term that we all use today. It's a conscience. It's the ability to distinguish between a right action and a wrong action. The military tries to ratchet this voice up inside of us to kind of deafening levels because it wants to challenge our moral courage. They use words like honor, integrity, doing the right thing when no one is looking. And my favorite comes from the West Point Cadet prayer, which it asks for the strength to do the harder right instead of the easier wrong. It's the harder right instead of the easier wrong. It's a challenge to our own moral compasses, our own moral courage. It challenges us to do the right thing, especially when it's hard. So once I became aware of what I like to call a string, it's like this really annoying string that's sitting in front of your face. It's begging for you to pull on it, but it's a really difficult thing to do. It's hard. It's hard because if you know that if you pull on that string that it's challenging your identities, your politics, your religion, and that's what happened to me here. I started challenging everything because I wanted to know, what else am I wrong about? Right? It's the feeling that the king had when he finally realized that I'm without clothes, right? You want to know, how long have I been walking around like this? Like, I want to be able to learn more. So it was only then that I really understood Socrates' definition of education, that you're only educated when you fully realize how uneducated you actually are. It's that the feeling that in the grand scheme of things, I really don't know anything. But you have to hungrily continue to pursue these types of things. Because around any corner, at any time, there may be this abundant harvest of wisdom and knowledge about what is good, what is pure, what is true, right? Because to me, these are the only types of pursuits that are worth having. These are the only conversations worth having. I want to spend my life pursuing these types of things. And anyone who would wish to rob you of this pursuit on your own by saying, repeat after me, I mean, you have to guard yourselves from this like a thief in the night. And for any of you that have maybe experienced something similar to this, you also know how maddeningly frustrating it is whenever you're talking to someone who knows that they're right and has nothing left to learn. So Gotthold Lessing, Dawn is in the back, she teaches philosophy, a great philosopher of the 18th century, a German philosopher, said that the true value of a man is not determined by his possession of the truth, but rather by his exertion to get true the truth. Right? He said that if God gave me one hand, and he said inside of it is the answer to all of life's challenges, all of truth exists in this hand right here. But then gave me the other hand and said, I'll give you this one, and it's only the drive to get true the truth. I'll be it with the proviso that you're always going to err along the way. Lessing said, I'll take the other hand every single time. Because what these great thinkers of the past can teach us is that it's not what we think. It's not what we know. It's how we know. It's how we think. And this brings me to my next point, and I kind of was debating on whether to bring it up here. But I think it's an interesting concept to kind of bring up, is that you're never going to accomplish these things by shouting people down or preventing people who you disagree with, preventing them from speaking. I mean, they're protected by the same First Amendment that is protected by the one that I can call them a fool, right? I may agree with the underlying principle of defending those against bullies, but I should be, and you should be as well, in lockstep with their ability and their right to be able to express these things. Poisonous ideas are not defeated by censoring them. They're only defeated by debate and by sunlight. A poor argument is only defeated with a better argument. Anyone who's arguing on the side of demagoguery, fascism, misogyny, racism, right? They're not going to be able to withstand public scrutiny. So let them speak. But make sure that when you do, you have a better argument. But don't be the one who's censoring them, preventing them from speaking. There's a lot of great thinkers of the past who wrote about this. You have John Stuart Mills in his essay on liberty. You have Thomas Paine in his introduction to the Age of Reason. Rosa Luxemburg, she's another great one who writes about freedom of expression. But they're writing about these things not only because you should have the ability, the right to say them on your own, but you also have the right to hear them yourselves and to think for yourself. John Stuart Mill, in his essay on liberty, he says that if all of society were in agreement on one point about what was good or true or whatever it may be, but there was one person who disagreed, that person's right must be protected. Because how else are we going to learn anything if we were all believing the same thing, agreeing with each other all the time? These are the points, these are the people whose opinions must be. Because the concept of free speech is meant to be uncomfortable. I mean, I'm going to say this in the time of microaggressions, but freedom of speech is meant to hurt your feelings sometimes. It's meant to make you think, because it's going to challenge how you think. It's meant to challenge your preconceived notions. This exercise is how ideas progress, because it teaches us to not merely exclaim that we're right, because doing so makes us indistinguishable from the zealots who know that they are. It teaches us the process, or the value of the process, of arriving at anything that we know to be true. This process requires us to understand opposing arguments. So some of you may be reading about Sir Thomas Bacon right now in class. He's the architect of the scientific method. He taught us that the process of understanding anything must begin from a position of doubt. Doubt not only your senses and how it makes you feel, but doubt the process by which you know anything to be true. Karl Marx, when he was asked about his favorite epigram, he said, de omnibus disputandum, which in Latin means everything must be doubted. So use doubt, use skepticism as a shield, and use that to be the great engine by which you know anything. I mean, there's a growing number of people who think that the earth is flat right now, right? I asked my 7-year-old son how he knew it wasn't flat, and he goes, I see pictures, Dad. But it's still persisting. Like, these people are like, oh, well, it's fake, right? I don't believe that. So do you know how to prove that the earth is round and not flat? Ridicule young earth creationists, right? Who think that the theory of evolution is not true. But do you know how to prove that the theory of evolution is true? You think you do, but I have these other people telling me that intelligent design, this is how it all works, right? Are you familiar with the Huxley and Wilberforce debate that explains these types of things? Is there actually a separation of church and state? I mean, I think there is. Everybody seems to say that there is. But if you look at the First Amendment, is it actually in the text? I have a lot of people that say that the country was founded upon Christian principles and that there shouldn't be, right? But are you familiar with the letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, or the Treaty of Tripoli for these types of things? You may think you know the answers to these things, but do you know theirs, right? Do you know how to prove that global warming is in fact happening? I mean, we have these scientists of the planet, Earth, who seem to think that this is a kind of a scientific fact, right? There's 97%. However, there's some who say that the climate's always been changing, right? Look, here's a snowball. How do you know that global warming is in fact happening, right? Is there a reason why certain people are disagreeing with the scientists of the planet Earth? Cicero taught us, or a good phrase that he used was cui bono. Who benefits? Who benefits from making you think or believe something that they know isn't true? So I'd say when you're studying these things, and everything that I kind of just went over, you have to understand the opposing arguments. You have to understand these opposing positions. Otherwise, you're not really learning anything. So you have to have the courage, whenever these good points seem to filter themselves away, you have to have the courage to tug on that string and make the decision to pursue truth at all costs. And I'd say that once you've done that, congratulations. You've crossed one of the biggest hurdles in life. But then what? What comes then? What are you going to do with this newfound sense of intellectual wokeness? If that's how you use that term, I'm not quite sure. I think I'm too old. But what I would ask you to do is to find something or to lend yourself to something that's bigger than you. That has, I was in the military, so I understand mission, right? This is kind of what drives me. I want to be a part of a mission that's bigger than me, that's in pursuit of something greater than me. It's going to give me a good purpose in life. It's going to make me feel like the time that I spent here was actually worth it. I don't want to be on my deathbed thinking, well, did I do a good job with the time that I had available to me? So, Sheila taught me a lot about China. And there's a Chinese curse which says, may he live in interesting times. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but we live in interesting times. There are times of uncertainty, of extreme polarization. There are times where people can't agree on basic reality, basic facts, basic truth. I mean, it's my truth, don't you know? So how can you speak to these types of things? There are times where millions of Americans are marching in the streets demanding action. Climate change, on gun violence, immigration, basic decency. But what I would say is that the leadership of this country has to grow up to meet these interesting times. But what I would say is that they haven't done that. They have, in fact, exacerbated them. We have to remember that the greatness of our own country is not built upon the shattered dreams of other human beings. The greatness of this country can only be built upon the character of its citizens. Teddy Roosevelt tells us that character in the long run is the decisive factor in the life of an individual and of nations alike. The challenge we find ourselves facing at this point in history is for the character of our own country. This is a character that generations to come will remember us by. This is a challenge to our own moral courage, a challenge to do the harder right instead of the easier wrong. But this character must be first forged within the whispers of our own hearts. Robert Kennedy tells us, when you teach a man to hate and to fear his brother, when you teach that he is a lesser man because of his color or his beliefs or the policies he pursues, When you teach that those who differ from you threaten your freedom or your family or your job, then you learn to confront those not as fellow citizens, but as enemies, to be met not with cooperation, but with conquest, to be subjugated and to be mastered. We learn at the last to share only a common fear, only a common desire to retreat from one another, only a common impulse to meet disagreement with force. All too often, we've glorified leaders who brandish swagger and bluster and look to the supposed greatness of the past. We have often excused their words, their actions. These are words and actions that we know wouldn't be acceptable in any school of leadership. They wouldn't be taught there, nor would they be preached at any religion. They are words and actions that we embarrassingly hide from the eyes and the ears of our own children. They send us searching for scapegoats and for conspiracies, and really only a reckoning within our own hearts and our own souls can we cleanse ourselves from this sickness. We need to have a leadership that is built on morals, who is willing to listen to the inner voice that they have inside of them, to do that harder right. Robert Kennedy also tells us that moral courage is a rarer commodity than bravery in battle or great intelligence. But this is the one essential quality that leaders must be made of. To be labeled a hero in battle, you do one thing, one time. But to be morally courageous is to come to the path that you have in front of you and to consistently choose the right path, especially because it's hard. What we need is leadership driven by moral courage and by values, because the challenges that we face are too great. And the time that we have here is too short to spend it living in anger and in fear. But the answer to these challenges are not going to be found simply within the confines of a ballot box. It has to first begin in rooms like this one. And that's really why I'm somewhat encouraged. It's because I've seen what the character of the next generation of leaders holds. It's young people who aren't swayed by the politics of division. There's a young woman in Sweden right now, a teenager, who has single-handedly brought the debate of climate change to the forefront of the international community. There's a girl in Pakistan who stood up to the guns of the Taliban and said, "I'm going to go to school today." She just won a Nobel Peace Prize. It's kids in Florida who are marching in the streets demanding action so that they're not being gunned down in their own schools. And it's veterans who are running for office, who need to run for office because they believe in service. They believe in something that's bigger than themselves. Our generation is not moved by the politics of division. I can't describe right now how many people in DC are living kind of on a knife's edge because they're terrified of the young people of this country sweeping them into the dustbins of history. So with that, I'd have one more thing from you, Dawn, is give me a place to stand and I will move the world. Archimedes said that, right? So any of you that are sitting in here, use this as something, use these great thinkers of the past. You know, build upon yourselves here and go make a difference. Go challenge the status quo. Don't be afraid of people who are telling you you can't do it. Look, I was 22, kid from Kansas. I was here at the same time, right? But I think I'll just leave it there. But anyways, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Yeah.
You've touched a little bit on it, but can you talk a little bit about, in your experience, the mentors you've had and the importance they've had on your life?
You know, I was just talking to a group of veterans that are here, and I kind of mentioned the exact same thing. I wouldn't be anywhere without mentors. I mean, I don't have great intelligence that any of you have, but what I did have is people who, they were teachers, who took an interest in me and made me want to be better. They gave me opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. while I was here, I had Bill, I had you, I had Beatty, I had a lot of, and Don, you know, I had a lot of people who were helping me try to figure out what can I do well after I leave here. I tried chemistry out, didn't work out very well. Tried biology, not for me. But I figured out that I love history. I love political science, I love policy, I like debating about these things, I like debating ideas. It pushed me in a direction to do something that I was passionate about and that I liked. It was a woman in UMKC, and I'm kicking myself because I can't remember her name right now. I wanted to go on a study abroad scholarship to Greece, and I wrote an essay for a scholarship, and I ended up winning the scholarship. And she told me, she said, you would be great in international relations. And I was like, sold. What is it? I don't have any idea what it is, but you're giving me good answers to questions that I have. But then once I looked into it, it's fantastic. I was like, I loved it. It's foreign policy, it's national security, it's intelligence, it's geopolitics, it's economics and international trade and international, it's like, these are all the hard stuff. It's religion. I love studying these hard things. And while I was there, I met one guy. He was a former senator from Nebraska named Chuck Hagel. He was a Vietnam vet, Purple Heart recipient. And to take a course like his, you have a lot of fancy people that are teaching there. It's like a lottery system where you put your name and you're like, I'd love to take a class from a fancy person. And I got his. And there's 90 students in this program, 40 countries, and there's 3 veterans. There's a West Pointer, fancy Army college. There's a Naval Academy, fancy Navy college. And then there's me. I was an E5 from Overland Park, Kansas, right? Kind of unlikely. So he was like, I want to speak to you after class. And I was like, oh my God, what do I say? I have no idea. I've never talked to somebody like this before. And I got to his class and he's like, what are you doing here? I was like, you're so aggressive. I fooled enough people to get in. He was like, good answer. He's been using that for the last 10 years, and it's not funny anymore. But at the time, it was accurate, right? It fooled enough people to get in. I felt like I was a complete imposter there. I had 40 countries worth of people who were all incredibly intelligent. They had done incredible things, and I felt like I didn't belong. But what I found out afterwards is that we all felt that way. We all felt that way. We weren't supposed to be here, right? But it was Hagel who took an interest in me. And you guys do it too. Find a teacher here who isn't just teaching to you in class for 50 minutes twice a week or whatever it may be, but who actually takes an interest in you and who wants to pick you up and pull you out and help you along the way. Hagel helped me get my first job. And when he became the Secretary of Defense, I remember I wrote him a letter. I was asking for a letter of recommendation. I was like, oh, he's the Secretary of Defense, and I was working at the Department of Defense at the time. And I was like, I only wanted him to bother him, I think, about big things. But I was like, I need a letter of recommendation, and would you write one for me? And he wrote it the next day. So find, mentors. You'll be nowhere without them. I mean, you're kind of meandering your way through, and you may get to the same point that you otherwise would. But if you can find a good mentor, cling on to them, or just keep bothering them enough that they don't have a choice.
You touched a little bit on your civil service, being a public servant. Can you talk about beyond how you got the jobs, what your job roles were? I see the job title of this, the title of this event is My Experiences as a Washington Insider.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, by the way. That was
not
me who did these things.
But I thought at least, for us, those of us that don't live inside the Beltway,
right.
What can you tell us about the jobs you had, the experiences you had, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, sure. So while I was in grad school, luckily enough, I said Chuck Hagel got me my first job. There was a Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future. So what presidents will do when they have an unpopular policy choice to make is they'll create what's called a Blue Ribbon Commission, and they'll load it up with people from the opposite political party. Because what it's going to do is it's like, look, they're saying it. They're saying we got to do these things. It's not me, right? So so he loaded it up with Chuck Hagel was on there, Brent Scowcroft, Susan Eisenhower, some of you may know, she's the granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She was on there. Ernie Moniz turned into the Secretary of Energy. So there's a lot of these fancy names that are on there, and I was lucky enough, I was probably completely unqualified for the position at the time. But I learned a lot from them, and I learned a lot really quickly. That was a commission that lasted about a year, and then once you turn your report into Congress, like, all right, what's next? And that was when I went into the DOD. I was working for the Special Operations Command in Afghanistan, and I was trying to help them make smart decisions. So a lot of them want to go kill bad guys, because bad guys are bad, and you kind of get the idea, right? But it's not always smart to get rid of them. Sometimes if you know their network, it makes them very predictable. So for intelligence reasons, national security reasons, we're trying to work smarter, not harder. We're not trying to take one step back or one step forward, 5 steps back. But then we were also negotiating with the Afghanistan government on the Status of Forces Agreement, which is like a legal document that is allowing our forces to stay in their country. But then if we accidentally kill civilians, we're not going to be persecuted in a court of law. So you have these formal agreements, international bilateral agreements that take place. Luckily enough, I was saying early in my other class, there was a classmate of mine from Georgetown who just so happened to work for the Ministry of Interior, a pretty senior position in there. So we ended up seeing each other. I was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? I'm working for my country. I'm working for my country. But I mean, it was kind of surreal. From there, I spent 14 months there doing those types of things. I had, at the time, my wife who was going to school here, getting a nursing degree. I hadn't been home for a while. So I had a kid who I had spent hardly any time with, and I needed to get back. So he introduced me to Secretary Shinseki, who some of you may know. He was the former Chief of Staff of the Army. He was the Secretary of Veterans Affairs at the time. And I was brought on and became a special assistant, a special advisor to him. And then subsequent to him, I held the same position with Bob McDonald, who was a former CEO of Procter & Gamble. Then he came on as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And then when David Shulkin, the past secretary, he was 2 secretaries ago, he was the Undersecretary of Health under President Obama. So he oversaw all the veterans hospitals in the country. President Trump asked him to stay on as VA secretary. And Secretary Shulkin asked me to stay on. He asked a lot of us to stay on. I mean, we had a lot of institutional knowledge. We had relationships that we had forged that had helped us write policy the right way. You include your partners the right way. And I mean, in those types of positions, there's no day that's the same. You're dealing with you see TV, you're dealing with the media cycle. You're dealing with trying to pass legislation. You're trying to figure out what coalitions are going to help us pass that legislation. So everything kind of changes. It's day to day. There's a lot of strategic messaging, a lot of, I don't know, DC stuff, right? But that made it interesting. And one of the probably favorite positions that I had there was I worked in our Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. I was our Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, and I had 3 business lines that came under me. It was international affairs, municipal affairs, that's all the mayors throughout the country, and then gubernatorial affairs, and that was, the relationships. My office was managing the relationships with governors, state directors of Veterans Affairs throughout the country. So I did a lot there. I loved my time there. But you asked also about public service, just in general, I'd say. What I loved about it is that I'm a vet, and I kind of mentioned it earlier when I was talking, is that I'm mission-oriented. And it's fulfilling to me to be a part of a mission that is bigger than me. It's a good purpose for me. It makes me feel like I'm fulfilled. It's like I'm not driven by, I wish I was, like financial success. I'd be doing a different job. But that's kind of what, I raised my hand to serve in the military, but it also gave me a chance. You take the same oath whenever you're raising your hand as a public servant, as you do in the military. And this is your God. A lot of people think that serving in the military is serving your country, but you have hundreds of thousands, millions of people throughout the country, they're serving their country, working for their country in government service. I mean, at the Department of Veterans Affairs, right? The Department of Labor, the Department of Education. I mean, these are people who have bought into that mission of that agency, and they're trying to do the best that they can with what they have available to them. So the time that I spent in public service was incredibly rewarding. I'll just kind of leave it at that.
So you're out of public service now, and I'll let you tell us what you do for Deloitte, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your future plans are. Going to retire with them? Or are you going to do something else going forward? And then I'll open it up for questions after that.
Yeah, sure. So at Deloitte now, like management consulting, what is that? I don't think there's any real definition for these things. I mean, consulting is you're essentially, people will hire you, consulting companies, because they have capabilities that you can bring. They have capacity problems. I mean, they have challenges that we're going to help them fix. Sometimes it's efficiency issues, right? We have problems in our business or our supply chain lines, you know? So if you can help them come in and fix their supply chains or distribution channels, we call them, you can save them millions of dollars. Sometimes it can be strategic, right? Are we allied with the right coalitions of people? You can be building things, you can be thinking about things. So consulting is like this, the most ambiguous term I've ever heard, because it means anything and everything. And you can make it mean whatever you want to mean. I mean, a lot of people, if they're leaving, like, so you'll have presidential transitions that leave, you'll see their LinkedIn page turn into consultant, right? Which means I'm doing everything right now. But I mean, essentially what I'm doing with Deloitte is a lot of government. It's the government capacity issue. So they're trying to run programs and services that maybe they don't have the capacity to. So we're helping them try to think through what that would mean. How, if they would implement something, what would that change? I don't know if that's helpful. I mean, it's a very ambiguous sort of thing.
I know it's a billion-dollar industry, and so
yeah.
When I was doing my research, I was quite, it was interesting delving into the website, because it is everything and anything that you might want them to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's so ambiguous, it's so big even for us that they have our own internal website that says, does Deloitte do that? Enter. And then you'll find, oh yeah, we do. And it's in Chicago, and that's who I need to call. You know, I mean, so yeah, it's big.
Future plans?
Future plans, I don't know, I have 2 small children right now. So trying to ensure that they stay alive, go to school someday, right? That's kind of, I mean, job one and job, once you're a parent, I mean, that's it. I mean, you work, and then the rest of your life is supposed to be making theirs better. But what I'm addicted, I mean, it's probably the wrong word to use, is that what I really enjoy doing, I mean, I enjoy service. And I like being a part of a good mission. So a part of us in the military, Austin can attest to this, is that you lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? So I help veterans right now I help veterans run for office, because I think if you put more of us into the political system, that it'll make it work better. Because if you're familiar with the military, as some of you may or may not be, we're very different, and we're very comfortable with those differences. We're comfortable with how we look and don't look, with the different types of religions, the different types of politics. I mean, those things are good with us, right? We all put on the uniform, and we go that way. And then they teach us in the military, you get lost, run to the gunfire. It's a counterintuitive sort of principle, that you get lost, run to where you hear the gunshots are. It's because that's where you know your friends are, right? It's a bigger way of saying, I don't know, but what I want to be able to do is figure out like where the gunfire is, and I want to head towards there. I don't know where that is yet. All right, with that, time is yours.
All right, because we're videotaping, I will bring a microphone to you if you have questions for Gabe, and you'll have to speak into the mic, right? So go ahead, I see the hands. I'm going to play Monty Hall here.
Well, as somebody who's in their 40s, I can definitely agree with and sympathize with your experience of being an older student and being very conscious about your classmates. My question is, you talked earlier about moral courage and your experiences in Washington. I'm wondering, in my mind, kind of what I hear from the news and from the media of Washington is either nobody's talking, they're yelling at each other, or they're, these spy novels, they're getting killed everywhere for the stuff that they know. My question is there any real dialogue between the different sides? Because you talked about like the blue ribbon panels, and then they kind of sound like they're getting kind of railroaded to the side. But is there any kind of dialogue between, different groups and progress being made forward to push things forward?
Tough question. And I don't want, the only reason why is because I don't want to get into like partisan rancor, right? What I'd say is that the discussion behind closed doors is very, very different. I mean, so if you have even a vague understanding of how, the political system works, is that we consume news, right? And we're voracious consumers of news. I mean, a lot of it's news that makes us feel good. I click on the stuff that I like, and I don't click on the stuff that I don't like, so it allows you to compartmentalize yourself to only reading, watching something that you agree with, because that's easy, makes me comfortable, makes me safe. What incentives are there to challenge or find things that are hard? Everything's meant to be easy. So the way that the media works in this is that they're feeding you a steady stream of what they already know that you want, right? So the challenging part of that is that, so the public, so what they're saying in front of cameras, they know who the audience that they're trying to reach. So but whenever they close the doors and objective reality kicks in, that's where the conversation is different. And you're going to hear things that are very different. But the reason why I want veterans involved in the political system is because we may disagree with each other, but we're not enemies. Like I was talking about Bobby Kennedy, right? Like we are okay. Like I might disagree with you, but I'm happy to go drink with you after work, right? Not enough of that happens anymore. So what you want is, what I think, is you want to get veterans who are in there, the right veterans, who can lead them. Like the power of mentorship. You want to find a veteran who finds or becomes the veteran or becomes the mentor to teaches them how to do the harder right. Because what you don't want is leadership that's driven by the easy or wrong. And that's how politics turns into things. You need political leaders. You need leaders in general who know how to do the harder right. But the challenge comes in with the public display of these things. Because you may have a political party, and some of them have told me behind closed doors, like, what do you want from me? Like, if I come out and I say this thing, or if I respond to a tweet, I'm not going to be lionized for being courageous. Like, they're not going to say that I'm speaking truth to power, right? I'm going to get called all sorts of names, right? There's no political benefit in it for me. Like, so, and if I do say it, then I'm just going to get primaried, which if you're all familiar, like somebody else is going to run against me. I'm going to lose, and they actually believe this stuff. So the way that they're kind of, the way that they meander through these things is they're like, well, I'm going to hold the line here and do what I can. But a lot of it turns into, it's how people consume information, how they speak in public versus what they say in private, right? I hope that made some sort of sense. Yeah?
How would you suggest that we, in this newer generation coming up from as JCCC students now, speak truth to power and challenge leaders today?
Awesome question, right? How do we do this? I've talked a lot about Bobby Kennedy today, but the reason why is because I think that his style of leadership is precisely what the type of leadership that would be applicable today. I mean, they were very contentious times for those of you who are young enough to have lived during then. But he was trying to bring a country together. So he went to South Africa in 1968, I think it was, and he gave a speech called The Ripple of Hope. And it's one of the best speeches that I've ever heard in my life. And any of you who have heard President Barack Obama speak, you may not agree with his politics or whatever, but he was a great orator. He knew how to give a speech, right? And I know some of his speechwriters, and he was heavily influenced by Bobby Kennedy, right? Just the way, like his own political train of thought, the way that he conveyed these things. But in the Ripple of Hope speech, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm trying to do it off the top of my head, that he's like, anytime someone stands up for an ideal or works to improve the lot of others, that he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And that ripple of hope, crossing each other from a million different intersections of energy and daring, will build a current that can take down the biggest walls of oppression that there is. So we may not be able to change things on our own, right? But lending yourself to something bigger, right? These Parkland kids, I love it because you may not agree with them, right? But you can't disagree with the impact that they're actually making on the debate, right? They're making a difference. These kids believe in something, and it's not acceptable for them to no longer be heard anymore. They're changing the narrative. Greta, I mentioned, right? I mean, you don't have to be, history's not going to remember each of our names, right? But lend yourself to something that you believe in, that's fulfilling to you. That's really, look, you can't do anything other than that. I mean, you're not going to be able to be Greta. You can't be Malala, right? Or maybe you can. You don't know that. But that shouldn't stop you from trying to pursue something that you believe in. Make sense? All right? Yeah, I'm fine.
Hi, you talked earlier about like knowing the arguments and knowing your argument and why you think that, knowing their argument, your opponent that is, and why they think that. What's your advice for getting to people who just, who are so deep in their own racism or sexism or stuff like that, or have seen the evidence and just kind of ignored it for some issues? Like, how do you reach some of those people?
I think if you can solve that, you can make a lot of money right now. Like a lot of money. I mean, look, if today is the sky is purple day, there's going to be some people, look, irrespective, you can walk outside and look, there's no clouds in the sky. The sky's purple, right? How do you communicate with a brain that way? And I think that a lot of it goes into how we consume information. It allows people's minds, how do you tell, so for someone who can't tell the difference between a conspiracy theory and objective reality, they don't know that, right? Like, they don't know that the world or what they're believing in is a conspiracy theory, right? This is their reality, and nobody wants to wake up every day being wrong. Oh, wow, this is like my whole identity right now is actually not even true, right? How do you communicate with someone like that? I mean, I just try to do a little bit, that you try to challenge people, because when I was here and when I was studying for one of his classes, and that moment hit me where I knew I was wrong. That's when that string popped up in front of my face. But how do you pull it when it's the hardest thing you've ever done? It's going to challenge everything about you. It's going to challenge your identity, your politics, your religion, your worldview. What can you do to encourage people to pull on that string? It's hard, right? Bill Nelson, he's a former senator, governor of Nebraska, was a Vietnam veteran, Medal of Honor recipient, Navy SEAL. He said, the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life was take something that I believe to be true and admit that I'm wrong. Hardest thing you ever have to do. So challenging I think that right now is a good time to challenge our moral courage. Because if we know that there are voices in our head, the good kind, right? Adam Smith, inner critic, these types of things. We know the difference between right and wrong. We know. Without question, we know. That's what makes leaders leaders. That's what makes us being able to distinguish these things. But you have to be able to encourage people to be courageous enough to tug on that string and to do what they know is right. But if you can figure out, I mean, these are the incentive patterns that people work by. How do you encourage people to do those things? And I think it begins with education. It begins in classrooms like Bill's and Jim's and Dawn's, right? Sheila, when she, not teaching here anymore, are you? Are you? Sheila, okay. But look, it begins in classrooms like these, where you notice these things happening, and there's a chink in the armor in your argument, right? So what do? You can dig in, right? A lot of people do. Right? Dig in, I can dig into my argument, and I'll just be, I'm bigger than you, I'm louder than you, and I'm right. And this is the argument goes on, irrespective of whether they know they're right or not. I just know how to repeat things, and I'm bigger and I'm louder. And I think that the discussion that we all have right now, if we can figure out how to challenge enough moral courage within folks, that's why I'm encouraged by younger people. Because younger people are much more in tune with this. Than some of the past, some of the older generations, right? Because they're looking at the things that are happening like it's not okay, right? And they're not afraid to speak out. But look, make a lot of money and figure out the answer to that one day. But thanks for your question,
man. This will be like the election that comes up in 2020 will be like the first election that a lot of Gen Z folks will be able to be of voting age. Can I ask you to expound a little bit on what you said earlier as far as concern as far as the younger generation and their thoughts on what's going on in Washington now? And do you see political involvement from people as young as 16, 17, 18, besides, obvious folks like the Parkland students, but unpack that a little bit as far as you said there was concern about the younger generation from a lot of Washington folks right now.
Oh, yeah. The concern being is like, look, people serve in Congress for 30 terms, right? Been there for 40 years or whatever it is. I mean, these guys, so they're not driven, they're driven by power, and they're driven by the positions that they hold. And they're scared to death of some young person come and sweeping them out of office. And you're seeing examples of that happen. Not all over the place, but they see the tidal wave coming, right? This is just a demographic pattern of younger people coming into their own, and they're starting to vote. And they're very politically active. If you look at the political activity of younger folks now, social media is not all bad. In some ways, it brings a lot of people closer together so that they can be a part of something that they believe in, right? Social media can spread messages like wildfire. The concern is that the politics that they have traditionally used to get people to show up to vote are no longer relevant. And the demographic patterns come, it's like, look, you guys have watched Game of Thrones, like, winter's coming. Right? And winter's coming, and they're gonna take all these. But this is something that we want to have happen. You want younger people of both political parties because it makes our system healthy, right? So if you have younger folks who are much closer aligned with each other, as opposed to the extremity that you see now, that's kind of what's driving a lot of the concern. It's not concern. These guys are scared. These men, women are scared to death of these things. But that's what I see. But that's also why I'm encouraged, because you need a healthy political system with both parties involved, right? You may be a Republican or a Democrat, whatever the case may be, but it has to work that way. It's like the good yin and the yang, keeping us, balanced. Hope I answered that okay. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Would you actually say that's already happening with people like Ocasio-Cortez and even our own representative, Sharice Davids? I'm only 30.
You have another one here.
I'm only 33.
Cindy Holster's here.
I'm 33.
She's your
there's
local
a lot
one.
of them who are similar in age to me, like Mayor Buttigieg. I cannot say his name.
Yeah, Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete
Buttigieg.
And they're all around the same age as I am in my generation that are already making changes. Do you think that Washington now is afraid of them?
What do you think?
I do.
No, what do you think?
I think that they are afraid of them.
Terrified.
And that, they're trying to slander them all the time.
Terrified, and there's a reason why they're doing that. There's a reason why. Look, they don't want you to come look, nobody wants to be in the dustbin of history, right? Nobody wants to be a former congressperson, former member, whatever the case may be, right? And the politics that perhaps they have been practicing, knowing that it may not have been the right thing, is going to come back to haunt them because young people aren't okay with it anymore, right? So lending, like young folks being involved, volunteering for campaigns, I mean, it doesn't matter, volunteer for something. You know, get involved in something. You know, it's a good purpose. It's going to help you do something that you know, hopefully in the pursuit of something bigger and better. But get involved. Get involved and try to make a difference.
Gabe,
Dawn, yes ma'am.
I think you've had a lot of really great things to share today, and it's a pleasure to see you and have you share these things, having known you as a student. But I think a lot of what you've said today, you've referenced courses that you've taken in the liberal arts area, so theater, history, philosophy, and this is an area that is seeing some attack in higher education, I think, in recent years, and programs are being cut, so Western civilization, for example, as a course requirement. And I think there's been a lot of emphasis on career tracks. So I just wondered maybe if you'd reiterate some of the tangible skills that you've taken from liberal arts courses of study that you think have really benefited you in your career.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard because STEM courses teach things that are tangible. STEM courses teach tangibility, though, and they are profit generating, right? You're creating something. You're creating something that people can buy, you know, so there's tangible value in a lot of those types of things. But none of that lends itself to critical thinking. I mean, that's not true. Of course it does, in its own way. Sorry if I offended anyone. But I think being able to study, I mean, history repeats itself. So I mean, I loved being able to study, learn from people from the past. It's a fulfilling part of what has driven me to do what I want to do, right? The tougher part is that everything is driven by revenue, right? And I think a lot of the revenue drivers, and look, you probably could explain this much better than I could because you're kind of involved in it much more, but I think that with the pressure of revenue drivers, that's really what a lot of this goes towards. It's like, look, is there an industry for a philosophy major? Is there an industry for someone who studies history? Can they go, if I hire this person, can they make money for me? Can they grow my business? Can they make another revenue line, right? So they're looking at how tax dollars are spent on education. States want their local economies, want their economies to grow. So they start investing in things that they see tangible ROI in, right? And for them, for some of them, maybe, Cindy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that perhaps is what I at least think drives a lot of this stuff. Economic growth and ROA, and they see the tangibility of those others. I don't know, you agree? Dawn, I'm asking, do you agree? No?
Yeah, I think so, but I think that there are tangible skills, and I think critical thinking is maybe one of the most important, if not the most important, that I think that we emphasize. Ability to analyze, evaluate information, to explore morality in a critical fashion. You've talked a lot about moral courage, right? And I think that that we do get these things, right? But they're maybe not as, they don't get the attention or the notice, but it really, I think, is concerning as a higher educator, right, to see that kind of attack on the liberal arts. And I think that you're just a great example to show how a liberal arts education has been very beneficial and how you can take those skills and translate them to life.
I mean, liberal arts, it's kind of the backbone of an informed electorate, right? It's how you inform citizens to be able to think critically and not just, I was talking about don't let people spoon feed you what to say, right? Don't just be a Rolodex of responses. Don't listen to the people that are saying repeat after me. You need to be able to think critically, clearly, to be able to distinguish these types of things, to know how to ask the right questions. Honestly, it's to ask the question why or how, and then know where that may lead. But I agree with you, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I felt like I had to jump in because I actually am a STEM educator and I teach philosophy and some other liberal arts.
I didn't mean any of it.
Well, what I'm going to do is maybe agree with you, and then maybe segue as to why they're complementary. That's been kind of my life's work, is to, and what I'll say, I'll personalize it. I'm an ecologist with a law degree, but I have other discipline areas that I've accumulated along the way, and I would always say that my first love is science, but my heart is big enough, which I think our minds and we really need to embrace other ways of knowing, and you don't get that. I mean, your idea about tangibility, yeah, science is great that way, and it's also limited in that way. And when you start to look at the world in a very interdisciplinary, from interdisciplinary lenses, and particularly philosophical ones, you expand your awareness, and you start to look at things much more creatively. And whether it's tangible or intangible, it actually is value added to our experiences as humans on this planet. But my question is, have you thought, you talked about veterans and the need for more veterans to enter public office. Have you thought about doing so? Because I think you offer great perspectives and are very engaging with your ideas, and more importantly, you've studied history and philosophy, and you have that background that I think a lot of our politicians maybe lack.
I mean, I'd be lying if I said that if I haven't thought about it before. I don't know how to answer this well. I mean, these are things that I'd like to, so I don't know if running for politics would be the right thing for me. But I am driven. I get insane when I see poor leadership. Like, there's nothing that bothers me more, because I've seen what I've seen what good leadership looks like. I've seen what leadership is supposed to be, right? And it's very apparent whenever you look at it, and it's not. So the mantra of, I mean, I wasn't an 11 Bravo, which in military talk is like, it's infantry soldier. I wasn't an infantry soldier. I did psychological operations while I was in there. But there's two military, so that one, lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? I think some people, I mean, it may not be running for office to do it. But you better lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? And like the motto of the Special Forces, the U.S. Special Forces, it's De Oppresso Liber. It's to liberate the oppressed, right? So it's an old Latin phrase. I think it came from St. Augustine. But it's to stand in front of those, give a voice to the voiceless, right? To stand up to bullies, to do the right thing. So, I mean, these types of things, this is what leadership should be. This is what your elected officials, this is what they should be led by. And if they are not living up to them, you can vote, right? So, Cindy, I know, is one of those. I'd encourage you to talk to her afterwards. I know she's running for a position here. But this is what your leadership should be made of. This is what you should demand of your own public officials. I mean, don't sit by idly watching something happen that you don't believe is right and just sit on your hands. I mean, there's going to be a time, whether you're religious or not, but somebody's going to judge you. You're going to judge yourself over what you did when your conscience demanded it. Right? Did you do the harder right instead of the easier wrong? Right? I feel like saying this Braveheart quote that I had back then. And lying in your beds many years, right? But the whole point being is that don't waste the time that you have here. Put it towards something that's bigger than you, better than you, and demand that of your own leaders.
Well, it's been an hour and some change, and I really very much appreciate you being here today. Let's give a warm round of gratitude for Mr. Gough's participation